And I guess I better sit down. All right, hello gang. Oh, I gotta hit the button to say, yes, it's being recorded. There we go. All right, welcome everybody to our first Wednesday class. We got the impression that you were all enjoying the Tuesdays and Thursdays and wanted a little bit more. So if we were wrong, boy, are you in for some trouble. Now, these Wednesday classes are going to be a bit different. So they're going to be a bit lower intensity. We're going to focus on some really key things, such as your balance and your mobility. And we're going to have a bit of a theme each session to focus on. So, for example, today, we're going to focus a little bit more on talking about balance.
Good.
And we're going to do that by starting at the feet, because balance starts at your feet. Your feet are the first thing that contact the ground whenever you move. For those of you that are mobile, and it's always a good idea to work on your toes and your feet. So this is going to be a bit funny, but I'm actually going to get all of you, if you can, to take off your socks and shoes. And so while you're doing that, as you're kind of reaching down and untying your shoes, just have a look. Make sure you have a little bit of space to move in today. There's no nothing to step on or trip over.
Can you go back a little bit so we can see your feet? We can't see your feet.
I'm going to put the camera down so you can see my toes. You bet.
Okay.
You never would have thought we would have gotten to that point. You're going, what do you mean? Look at your toes. All right, gang. So from here, so the first thing I want you to look at is I just want you to peer over and look at how your toes are contacting the ground. So some things to look at are, you know, that big toe, is it pushed in towards the other toes?
Yes.
Are your toes close together, or do they have a little bit of space between them?
No.
Want to come and join me?
Now, and just a quick reminder, guys, if at any point you get a phone call or someone comes into the room to talk to you, anything like that, please put yourself on mute because we can hear everything. And if you hear anything on my end, just let me know and I will remedy that, okay? Now, looking at our toes, what's normal for most of us wearing shoes most of our life is those toes get kind of squished together. Now, when we talk about balancing, what's more stable when we're standing? Or if you think about a chair with 4 legs versus a stool, what's more stable, things being close together or further apart?
Further apart.
Further apart. So when we look at our feet, and if we notice we don't have as much space between our toes, that already can be impacting our balance.
Okay.
Right? So, and that can sometimes, if some of you may have had or you've heard of things like a bunion.
I got those.
Yeah. So what a bunion is, it's that big toe, and right where that big toe bone, the joint, so just at the base of your toe, when that big toe gets pushed in, that joint on the outside, or sorry, on the right towards the middle of your body, it gets inflamed because it keeps getting squished in and that joint kind of opens up. And so then we get a little bit of inflammation and pain because that joint isn't stacked up the way it wants to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is I just want you to see if you can actually, and don't push it, go gentle, because when we're not used to working with certain muscles, like the muscles in our feet, things can cramp up and I don't want that for you. Okay. So I want you just to see if you can just spread out your toes. And you might see things like one toe moves.
Great, thank you.
Maybe your toes do it a little bit and then they stop. Those are all normal things when we don't have that strong nervous system connection between our brain and those little muscles that we're not used to using. Kind of like it's harder to write with your non-dominant hand because we haven't built the skill, we haven't built that connection with using those muscles in that way. And so today is all about we're going to get that connection going with our toes and looking at how we can strengthen the feet and how that builds into being better at balancing and better at walking.
Is that why toes can be stiff too, Jill?
Is that why toes can be stiff?
Yeah.
That can contribute to it. Again, if you think about it, if you're someone who wears tight shoes a lot and those toes don't get a chance to spread out, that's going to stiffen them up too and make it harder for those muscles in your feet to do their job. So one thing that actually can be helpful, especially if you've got bunions,
Yes.
even if you go to the dollar store, you can get these little foam things that people sometimes use for painting their nails.
Yeah.
And if you've got, sometimes if they're too thick, because if we spread apart our toes too far and they're not used to it, that can hurt. But you can always trim off some of that foam so it's thinner. And so even just sitting, watching TV or eating dinner and you've got your toes kind of spaced apart, that can help stretch them out so that it's easier to get them moving and to get them stronger.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to get you to do, gang, is take your feet, make sure your feet are kind of just directly underneath you. So not far out in front, they're just right underneath your knees. And I want you to be looking at your toes. Can you push your toes into the ground? So my foot and heel stay on the ground.
Yep.
I'm not curling my toes up underneath me, but pressing my toes, and see if you can get some little white knuckles on each of your toes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then relax it, and then let's try it again. So my right foot, each of my toes, I can get white knuckles. My left foot always struggles a little bit. I've had 2 torn ACLs in this knee, so sometimes the connection isn't as strong. And my one toe goes a bit wonky. So it's normal for one foot to be better at it than the other.
I think I have
Let's try
hammer
to get
toes on one foot.
What's that?
I think I have hammer toes on one foot.
I do too.
Me too.
Yes.
Yeah, she's walking about stretching the toes out.
Yeah.
And is it sore, Karen?
I got it.
Well, that's a whole other story.
Okay.
I have peripheral neuropathy, so sometimes they hurt when nothing's wrong. And
Gotcha. Well, and getting this can actually get a little bit of movement through your toes and movement through that nerve, which can help.
Right.
So now what I want you to do, gang, because I want you to see if you can press those toes down enough. And what you might notice is you might notice the back of your lower legs. Those are kind of where people say their calves are.
Yeah.
But you've actually got muscles underneath your calf that help move your toes, that help flex those toes. So you might feel that part of your leg tense up, and you might even notice your knees turn outwards just a little bit when you focus on pressing those toes into the ground.
Yeah.
Now that's a great thing, because when we press our toes into the ground, what we want is we want our glutes to engage. Because when you think about it, when we're walking and we step and we go to push off our big toe, one of our basic motor patterns is, okay, I'm pushing off that toe, and that signals that glute to kick in and help us push off that foot. So now we're not just looking at strengthening your toes and feet. We're looking at how strengthening that part connects to the rest of your body.
Right.
And how that helps also with your walking and with your balance. So now what I'm going to get you to do, and we're going to do it at least 10 times, is I want you to, again, press those toes into the ground. And now consciously, because we're going to build that pattern, I want you to tighten up your glutes. So think about pressing your toes down in the ground and tighten those glutes. Hold, and then relax. Once again, press those toes into the ground, tense up those glutes, like you're trying to crush a walnut between your bum cheeks, and relax. We've got a couple more of those. Press, hold, and relax. Press those toes down, clench those glutes, hold, and relax. And again. And let's aim for 5 more. And again, don't focus on trying to, grip or press as hard as you can. No, we're just trying to get that connection. So just try to get your toes pressing and your glutes being able to tighten at the same time. Think about we're fine tuning things. So not maximum effort, just trying to get them working. Is anyone finding it easier to do after having done a couple?
Yep.
Yeah. No. No.
There we go. All right. Now relax. And if you need to, you can kind of tap your toes out. Perfect. All right. Excellent job, gang. Now the second one we're going to do, and this one's sometimes quite tricky for people, is can you keep your little toes down and lift up just your big toe?
That's tough.
Maybe you're able to do both at a time. Maybe you need to do just one toe at a time. And again, if your feet aren't used to doing these kinds of movements, they might get tired, and just be cautious that we're not trying to go as hard as we can, because that can cause it to cramp up. You might notice, again, that little fluttering of some of your toes as you're trying to keep them down and the big toe lifts up. Sometimes that big toe doesn't want to move at all. Is anyone experiencing that?
I am. My right one moves, my left one doesn't move.
Yes. Yes, and you're more right-sided, hey, Janet?
No, I'm left-handed in everything.
Are you? There we
Yes.
go.
Very left-handed.
I can lift my left one, but not the right one. It's going up all my
Yeah.
toenails down there.
So what can be helpful for that game? Because it's super normal to have one side that's stronger than the other. Even if, in Janet's case, she's going, well, I'm left-handed and it's my left toes that aren't doing the work. Well, that's okay. That can happen. So what I want you guys to do, if you're experiencing that, is on the strong leg, so on the foot where the toe can do it pretty much no problem, I want you to slowly do 10 and really get how that feels. So really feel those little toes staying down, lifting that big toe. Let's do 10 on the strong side, and then right away we're going to shift and do it on your other side. So we're building that neural pattern with the strong foot, and then we'll switch to the side that struggles with it. And again, we're connecting our toes and our glutes together. Can we tighten up those glutes as we lift that toe?
Jeez.
So I've got 2 more on my strong foot. And 1, and now I'm switching.
Well, it's not a good idea to reach down with their hands and pull our toe up.
No.
That's just to know the stage I'm at. Mine doesn't budge. My toe does not budge.
And you know what? That's okay. With practice, it'll come. The important thing is that you are intentionally trying to lift that toe. That's going to build the neural pattern. So really look at that toe and try to lift it, even if it doesn't move, and tighten those glutes, and then relax it. And let's see after a couple, even after 10 or 15, let's see if it gets moving.
It's moving, but all of the toenails are moving.
So combine
Me too,
combine our two exercises, Carmen. Try to combine them, right? So our little toes need to press into the ground just like we practiced. And now that big toe can try to lift up.
Yeah, that's,
Mine both are.
No. No.
And guys, it's super normal. So don't panic and don't get down on yourselves if you're not moving one of your toes. That's okay. Or if all your toes are moving.
Oh, it
Remember,
works.
this is-
Now 3 is moving, like 3 of them are moving, not 5.
There we go. Improvement.
It-
This is a little bit of skill of coordination, right? We talked about this is about fine tuning things. Again, like writing with your left hand, it's not going to look great. You have to put in the work and practice with it. And some of us might be naturally just a little bit better at writing with our non-dominant hand. Some of us need to work hard at it. It's the same thing with the toes. It's an unusual movement. When's the last time you tried moving individual toes?
Never.
Never.
Never. And you thought you were going to get it right away. No, it takes a little bit of time, little bit of work, and that's okay. Now, just wiggle out your toes. They might need to just relax a little bit. And I'm going to show you the next one. Total, we're going to do 4 exercise. Oh, I lied to you. 5 exercises. And then what I've written them down, and what I'll do is I'll have Maureen send them out to you. Okay?
Okay.
So that you can practice them.
Okay.
And you can show me in a week, 2 weeks, how good you've gotten at them. Now, lift up all your toes. And again, it's often easier to start with just one foot at a time. It's easier for our brains to focus on just the one limb. So all toes are up, and this time you're trying to press down just your big toe.
get out of here.
On both.
That one is easy.
Yep, and sometimes for some people, this one is harder than the one we just did. Sometimes this one is vice versa. I want to know how Alana's doing. Can you do it?
The previous one, I did better on my left side, like somebody else, my non-dominant side, than my right, but eventually I got my right.
Yay!
This one, I've been told to work on my nerve flossers on my right side. And when I try to put, I get a little bit of that zing of like feeling the nerve, like a little,
Oh, do you?
a little tingle. So obviously I haven't been doing my nerve flossing enough.
No, that sciatic coming down your right side. So by having your toes up and pushing down the big toe, that's where you're getting the zing?
Yeah, only on my right side, but I left is fine. But that's
Okay.
the side that I feel when I'm swimming, like that the top of my foot feels tight.
Yep.
And yeah, so I'm supposed to be doing these nerve sliders to make it not feel tight. It's probably a nerve thing, not an actual physical thing. So
Perfect. And
apparently
so
it's
just,
a really good exercise for me.
oh, good. And one thing just to be cautious of, Alana, is if you get into that slump, looking down at your toes, that can increase that that neural tension too.
Yeah.
So that might just relieve a bit of that zing. Okay, gang, I'm sorry. You know me by now. I'm a terrible counter. Have you all done at least 10 per foot?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else got zingy toes or just me?
I can't do it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Is anyone else feeling any tingling or sharpness or
Nope.
zinginess in
No.
their foot or down their
Normal.
leg?
My toes always tingle.
Who was that? Who said that?
My toes are always tingling.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you have, has a doctor told you you have neuropathy?
I don't know. It's worse.
You get
when
a,
it gets worse when I have to have an antibiotic.
mm,
I think it's a side effect of those. They always feel.
Interesting. Interesting. If you would like, I'd be happy to discuss further with you after class.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. Just so that we're not getting into your medical history over a recorded
Right.
session.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm happy to do that. That's very interesting. Okay, gang. Now, this is number 4. So feet are relaxed. And again, we're going to get into that push off. So I want you thinking about tightening your glutes. And the pattern is lifting your heels up. So press through your toes to lift those heels up and tighten those glutes. And then down and relax. And if you want to do this standing, if you're feeling very confident with your balance, you can feel free to hold on to some balance support and do this standing. But it's lifting up your heels, tighten those glutes, and then down and relax. So this movement is directly building into that pattern that we mentioned earlier of when you take your step and you go to push off that toe, we need that signal of our glute engaging to help us take that step. Push off.
Bless you.
Bless you. So heels up, tighten those glutes, down and relax. Now that's another question I should have asked earlier. Can everyone feel their glutes engaging?
Yeah.
You can feel them tighten up?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that some of you are really feeling it.
Walnuts are getting in the way, Jill.
Well, like you've said before, Terry, time to graduate to an almond. Excellent job, gang. That looks awesome. Even though for about half of you, I can only see your head. I can see the concentration on your face.
We're actually doing it.
I believe it. There we go, gang. So of course, the goal is to try to get 15 to 20 because the higher reps work better with building a pattern in your nervous system. But of course, you have to be careful about fatigue. So if things get sore or really tired by about 10, that's where you start off with these exercises, okay? And then trying to incorporate them in your day-to-day is how you kind of accumulate them. And as they get less fatiguing, you can start adding on more. Now, I did tell you that there was a 5th one because a common muscle group that usually gets missed is what's called your tibialis anterior. And that's a big long name for the muscle that's at the front of your shin and is responsible for you lifting up your foot.
Oh,
Well, it has 2 really key goals. So it helps you lift up your foot. So when you're walking, it helps you pick your foot up so you're not tripping over things. And strengthening that muscle is really great for knee pain because when you step and plant, that muscle acts as a bit of a shock absorber, as a bit of a brake, so that when that muscle's strong, it takes that force. But if it's a bit weaker, that can put more stress through your knee. And it can make your knee do more of that shock absorption. Okay, so what I want you to do is I'll show you 2 options, and it just depends on how strong it feels, but everyone start with the seated option. I want you just to straighten your feet out in front of you. And maybe I'll actually turn to the side. So straighten your feet out in front of you. And I want you to plant your toes, your feet down, so your toes are pointed down. And now I want you to pull those toes up, keeping your heel on the ground. You should feel your shin tight. And then slowly relax it. So everything is slow. So slowly pull those toes up, bringing your feet off the ground, keeping the heels down, and then slowly relax it. And actually try to press your feet down to the ground. Press your toes to the ground. You get that little bit of a stretch here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is also really good. And then slowly pull them back up. Now, for some of you, if that feels quite easy, especially if you're used to doing lots of walking, what you can try, and I'll shift this, is you can try it against the wall. So if you just get your hips and back against the wall with your feet out slightly, and then again, you're pulling those feet up, that's a more challenging way of doing that exercise. So especially if you do lots of walking, you might want to try it this way. Again, you're trying to pull it up. How's
Yeah.
everybody's tibialis feeling?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, you can really feel that at the front
Yeah.
of the shin. It gets tired.
It does.
And so again, you have to take responsibility for where your body is at. And if you can only do 10, great. That's where you start off at. If you can do 15, if you can get up to 20, also great. Okay? Now, I think everyone's done at least 10 of those. At least. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through all 5 again just to keep it fresh in your brains. And then we'll move on to a couple other things as well. Sound good?
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, so again, I'm going to just go through 10 of each one. If you're feeling really good and you want to get up a couple extra, doing more than 10, awesome. You do that. Now, that first one, guys, is feet directly under your knees. I want you to press those toes into the ground and tighten your glutes. Hold, relax. So that's 1. Push those toes into the ground, tighten your glutes, and then relax. It's 2. Push the toes down, tighten the glutes. 3. Push the toes down, tighten the glutes, relax. That's 4. Push down and tighten. 5. Push down and tighten. 6. Push down and tighten. 7. Push down and tighten. 8. Push down and tighten. 9. Push down and tighten. 10. Awesome, awesome job. Now that second one, lifting just the big toe up. And again, keeping those glutes a little bit tight can really help you with moving your toes because we're keeping our hips stable, which allows our more distant muscles, our more distant joints to move more because we have that central stability. So try to keep those little toes down, lifting up the big toe, and then relax. And again, if you need to do just 1 toe at a time, that's what you do. Who knew moving just your toes could be so much fun?
It's so hard.
And so hard, that's right.
Yeah.
If someone calls you later today or comes to visit and they go, well, how was your exercise today? You go, they were so hard. And all we did was move our toes. There we go, gang. And then that third one, and remember you can just shake out your feet in between if you need to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That third one is lifting all the toes up and pushing down just the big toe. So all the toes up, push down just the big toe. And once again, keeping your glutes a little bit engaged. That just means a little bit tightened or a little bit flexed. Can help you move your toes. And we've been so focused on our toes. I just want to check in. Has everyone been maintaining a steady breathing pattern?
Yes.
No.
Trying to.
Sometimes I
You forget all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Especially when you're so focused on so many different things. So here's your reminder. Take that slightly deeper breath than what is maybe your subconscious norm, meaning we're focused on different things. We're not paying attention to what our breathing is doing. So it might be a bit more shallow than we would like it to be. All right, number 4, lift up our heels and tighten our glutes, and then down and relax. Lift up our heels, tighten your glutes, down and relax. Great job, gang. Is anyone noticing that their glutes are getting a bit tired?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to admit it.
This there.
There you go. That's a good thing. If you can feel your glutes becoming a bit tired, that's a great thing. It means you've actually been getting them to do the work. They've been working, so they're getting a bit tired. Great job, everybody. Just lifting up those heels, press through those toes, tighten those glutes and relax. So I did really great at counting for our first exercise, and it slowly, quickly plummeted off.
Okay.
I've got to learn to assign a counter.
Think how fast it deteriorated.
All right, relax there. And again, you might need to shake those feet out a little bit. All right, and now we're doing the reverse of that. Get your feet a bit out in front of you, kind of point your toes. So we're getting that little bit of a stretch down the shin, and then pull those toes up, keeping your heels on the ground and down. And if you need a bit more of a challenge, especially if you are a walker, you might want to lean against the wall. So pull those toes up and down. Great job, everybody. How's everybody feeling so far?
Good,
Good. Good.
good.
Good.
Awesome. So we'll do a couple more of these. I know we talked about bunions already and how actually moving your toes and strengthening your feet can help with bunions. It can also help reduce neuropathy. And neuropathy can come from a variety of causes. The most common one people are familiar with is diabetes. And neuropathy is just where the nerves get attacked, they get a bit weakened. So anytime we can get our nerves working, our nervous system working, just like we do for our lungs, that helps.
Any ideas for damage with gout?
For gout?
Any ideas for damage from that?
Yeah, well, anytime you can get movement to an area of injury or pain, especially chronic, and if it's done in the right way, then that very often helps.
Oh, good.
Right?
Because I find with gout, it'll make your big toe sort of cross towards your other ones and ball out over here. And so
Yep.
it needs to be pulled back somehow.
Yep. And the stronger the muscles are that move that big toe, the easier it is to recover from that.
Yeah. It still changes your shoe size, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, geez, Rick. There, yeah, it does.
Jill, does the, excuse me, does edema in your lower legs and feet affect the nerves at all?
Yep, it can affect the nerves and how the muscles function. So edema, that also just means swelling, right? And when there's that fluid, it can kind of impact or affect how your muscles and nerves work.
It's hard.
It is hard. So that bit of movement, on one hand, can help flush that edema out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it helps prevent the muscles and nerves from getting impacted.
Okay.
Yeah. So similar to any time there's an acute injury, you know, how many of you have had a hip or knee replacement?
Not yet.
Not yet. Am
Don't
I the only one on here that's had a knee surgery?
I've had scoped, I've been scoped, but not no replacement.
I was about to be quite pleased. That never happens.
I've had 2 of them done.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So one of the main things is that pain and swelling interfere how it functions. And that's one of the reasons, along with not using it at first, that you lose some muscle mass. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to do your exercises after that surgery. It's to help that muscle come back, but it also helps the nerves and the muscles regain their function. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing with those toes and feet. If we get them moving and we get things working better and getting them stronger, it helps. It helps them function.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So guys,
Also with the swelling, I find I can't separate my big toe.
no,
I can't lift it separately.
no.
Me neither.
And again, trying to move it, and especially so for you, especially getting your foot pumping, right? And even if it's up on something, if you're laying back in recliner and have your foot up, getting that ankle to pump will help flush that swelling out.
Good.
Good idea.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, yeah, because swelling is our body's way of splinting things. It's a natural splint, because our body's going, well, if that hurts, then we don't want it to move. Although movement is how we help it get better. And sometimes there's swelling that is there for a different reason and we don't need it there. It's really important to try to get that out.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, get it elevated. And again, if it's above your heart rate, so you're laying back and your foot's up and you just get it pumping, that's a great way. But even if you're just sitting and watching TV, up and down, yeah, get it moving. That helps. Now, guys, put one foot out in front of you, because I just want to have a look at your ankle mobility. So that's how much can your foot move versus how stiff is it? Now my heel is on the ground, my toes are up. How far, and go slow, how far can you pull that foot without moving your knee? I don't want the knee or hip to rotate. How far can you pull that foot towards your other foot? So pulling it inwards to the midline of your body.
Not very good.
And
Not
then
as far as you
slowly,
can.
Ooh,
it takes practice.
ooh.
And then how far can you pull it away from your other foot?
It hurts.
And again, go slow, because if you try to go fast or you pull too hard, things can cramp up because they're not used to going into that movement.
Right.
Right? Think about, well, if I've never done that movement before, well, that's going to kind of startle your body. Go slow. Now, can we slowly go back and forth a couple of times? And again, just go to where you're comfortable with. Don't try to push it to maximum.
Yeah, straight
It's
out.
okay. Yeah, it's okay for it to be a little bit uncomfortable, but don't push past that point. And as you do a couple, you might find you're able, that kind of uncomfortable level improves. You're able to get a little bit further.
That's
Yeah.
right.
My calf doesn't like it.
Your calf's getting a little
The
bit upset.
the back of the calf just
Yeah.
tightens right up.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what
Mine
you can
too.
do there is pull that foot in. So now instead of the leg being straight, that knee is now bent.
Mm.
If you've got really tight calves, that can stretch it. And now we're trying to pull against even further. And a tight calf can go, hey, what are you doing?
That's a
Oh
mind
my
state.
goodness, that's a big stretch. So we can kind of relieve that a little bit just by bending the knee. Because that calf muscle, it helps you point your foot. So that means it attaches and crosses and affects the knee, the ankle joint. But it also helps you bend your knee, which means it crosses over your knee joint too. And so that's actually a really good point. Leading into telling you that sometimes getting that ankle moving better and getting that calf a bit looser actually helps with knee pain.
Oh,
Sometimes knee pain is actually coming from tight ankles. And when your ankle can't move the way it needs to, it's stiff, that sometimes makes that knee really tight and sore. Okay, did everyone switch feet? Did we do our other foot
Yep.
too, of slowly pulling it
I
in
did.
and out?
I did.
Self-sufficient, woo! I love it. Okay, so I want you to think, we've gotten our toes moving in different directions. We've gotten our feet or ankles moving in the 4 directions. Now, and we've talked about tight calves and how that can limit how your ankle moves. It can limit what happens at the knee. What I would like you to do, if you're comfortable standing, holding on to your chair, then stand up for me. And I'm going to shift this because I want you to hold on to your chair and I want you to line up your foot. I'm going to line it up on the leg of this bench and I want you to line it up to the leg of your chair. You can hold on to the chair. Your other leg, it doesn't matter what it does. You can have it wherever is comfortable. But that leg that's lined up with the leg of the chair, I want you to keep that foot fully on the ground. And I want you to slowly bend forward until your knee touches the chair. Now, if you start off with your foot really close to the chair and you're going, oh, no problem, my knee can touch, then I want you just to slowly move it back bit by bit until you find the range where you're just able to touch. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it's a bit challenging. You have to go slow and you have to focus on keeping that heel down, but you're just able to touch that knee to the chair. Then I want you to touch and then relax slowly 10 times at that range. Again, find the challenging yet doable range. And you might feel that bit of a stretch down the back of your leg.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I always love the responses we get. There we go. So once you've done about 10, if you couldn't quite get to that number, no problem. If you're able to do more, that's great. Before you move that foot, I want you to take your other foot and try to line it up exactly in line with where that first foot was. So now it's the same distance away. And I want you to see if it's easier to touch the knee, harder, or the same.
Harder.
Some of you are saying
Way
it's the
harder.
same.
Harder.
So,
Harder.
and quite a few are going, that's harder.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
I don't know.
If it's the same distance away, but one leg is harder than the other, what is that telling you about your calf?
Too tight.
One's tighter.
One side is tighter than the other. Now that's creating what's called an imbalance. There's an imbalance. One leg is tighter than the other. That means we want to work a little bit harder at getting this side moving.
Actually, my knee is starting to hurt a little bit.
Mine too.
By touching it.
Yes.
Okay, so what can happen there a little bit is if you're putting all your weight forwards, and really be cautious that that heel isn't lifting up, because that can put a lot of force through that knee.
Okay.
So get your other leg planted. You can even turn it out slightly. And think about not letting your whole body travel forward. Hang on to that chair and let just the knee press. So see how I'm keeping my shoulders more upright? And see if that, and tell me if that feels better or worse or the same.
Yeah.
That's a little bit better?
Feels
Yeah.
a little better. Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we get our whole body pushing forward, that's just putting more force through the knee versus if you stay a little bit more upright, just hang on to the chair and just let the knee travel on its own. Then we're getting that same movement through our ankle, the same stretch, but without as much pressure or weight on that knee. Okay. All right. Now I'm sure you've all done 10 on each foot. Nice work. Okay. Now, what I'm going to get you to do is we're going to do a little bit more of it. That was more mobility versus stretching. Stretching is where we're increasing the length of the muscle and its tolerance to being stretched. Mobility is where we're getting that joint or the muscles to move in their range of motion with strength. So we're not just stretching the calf, we're getting it to be able to move and stretch it out, but strengthening the opposite side as well. Does that make sense? Yeah. So stretching with movement. Now, you might need a wall. Just thinking, or you could probably do it against your chair if you're holding on to it. But I just want you to point your toe up.
Get out of here.
Now, and what's often difficult to do is if you don't quite have that range to lift that foot up a lot, then what you can do is grab, you can grab a book to put your foot on, or if you've got a stainless steel water bottle, you can put it just underneath your foot and then stretch out your calf that way.
What about the weight?
Yep. Yep. And again, put the weight against the leg of your chair so you've got your balance support, and just put the bottom of your foot up. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
So we're getting that little bit of an angle here, and then just really gently press forward, and you should feel a bit of a stretch all the way up the back of your leg. You don't want that to feel intense. So when we talk about stretching and trying to loosen off muscles, it should be quite gentle. It should feel a slight pull. It shouldn't feel like, oh no, that's stretching hard. Okay. So the goal is to keep breathing slowly to allow that muscle to stretch out, and holding, about 20 to 45 seconds. There's a lot of conflicting research on what the perfect amount of time is for a stretch. What you should aim for is for it to feel relieving. So if it feels like it's suddenly getting tighter and more stiff, okay, we've held it too long. If you feel it start to kind of just relax into the stretch, perfect. That's kind of where you stop. You did the job. It did it. It worked. Switch legs if you haven't already. So again, a stretch should feel relieving. Try to hold it and just slowly breathe. Fill up that belly, those slower, deeper breaths to allow it to relax. All right, and relax there. Now, the last thing, and if you're standing, stay standing.
Okay.
What I want you to, and if you're staying seated, just hold on a moment. You can sit there and I'll show you in a second what I want you to do. So if you're standing, I want you holding on to some balance support. So hang on to the back of your chair. Now, you've got two options here. If you're not comfortable fully putting weight on one foot to lift the other leg up, then I want you just to touch your heel forward, but keep the weight on that stance leg. Now, regardless of which one you're doing, I want you to think about two things. We've been working on strengthening our feet. So can we think about these toes kind of gripping the ground? So our toes are pressing into the ground. And can we tighten up our glute? To slowly either lift up the other leg while holding on, you can have balance support, or stepping that foot forward a little bit. And if you're stepping that foot forward and back, kind of go 3 to 5 times, whatever's challenging yet doable. Now, if you're seated, I again want you to think about the one foot kind of gripping that ground and the glute tightening. Can you lift up one knee without your body shifting at all? And if you want to kind of hold your arms straight out in front of you, that can give you a visual. Because if your arms stay still, that's usually a good indicator that your hips stayed still as well. So if you're seated, we're lifting up that one foot while the other kind of grips the ground. That glute is tight and there's no movement in the hips when you lift that leg. And go ahead and switch legs, gang. Can everyone feel that?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And how does it feel compared to just trying to stand on one leg? You can even try it. You can even try, just keep that foot relaxed and lift versus gripping the ground and tightening that glute. How does it feel?
More stable.
Yeah. It feels more stable and it feels stronger.
Yeah.
So again, we talked about those glutes engaging create a stable hip, a stable platform. When our glutes is engaged when we're on one leg, and that's what happens when we take a step. We go from one leg to the other. Those glutes staying strong help prevent the hip from dropping, especially the glute muscle called your gluteus medius. It's responsible for not letting that hip drop. And when our foot is strong and grips that ground, we've got more stability and strength in both our balance and in our step. And you can even feel that if you're seated. You're gripping the ground and tightening that glute. You go slow, there's no movement. Now, one last thing I want you guys to do. And if you were going to be standing, this is what I want you to do. I want you to walk. And if you want to go walk a slow lap around your house, you can. Or you can just walk kind of forwards and back, holding on to your chair. But I want you stepping and thinking about pushing off your big toe as you walk.
Oh.
So I want you thinking about step and push off that big toe. Step and push off that big toe. And see if you can feel those glute muscles engaging as you take that step. Push off the big toe. Now, if you're not comfortable doing that and you want to stay seated, that's okay. I want you marching nice and slow. And I want you to think about pushing off your toe as the other lifts up. So as I lift up one leg, my other foot lifts up as my foot comes down, and then I switch. So I lift up the heel as my knee lifts up. Nice and slow. And if you're a confident walker, do a lap, go for it. Let me know how it feels.
I did one, Jill, but my balance seemed to be a little bit shaky.
Did it? Were
Yeah,
you
I did a little lap.
compared to normal, Janet?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So were you trying to go up onto your toes?
Probably, yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
I think I
so,
was.
and that's fair because a lot of people, you say push off the toes and they kind of come up. When really what I want you to do is kind of, you're propelling yourself forwards. So instead of getting your momentum up, you actually just want to push back. Does that make sense? So it's this kind of a push off rather than this kind of a push off.
Yeah, I think that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to
It
try
was just
again?
throwing my balance off a bit.
Yeah. And so again, you don't have to go fast, but just think about, you know, when we push off, I'm pushing off to go forwards. So it's almost like I'm gripping the ground and pulling the ground behind me with my toes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a good thing to bring up, because you're right, when we come up, that's going to make us more off balance.
It did.
Yeah.
Jill,
Yeah.
it sure makes a difference for me anyway, as to what shoes I wear. And even
Yes.
slippers around the
Yes.
house.
Yes.
What I wear around the house makes a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a good thing. I'm going to come closer so I can see your faces better. That's a great thing to bring up, Janet. You know, footwear is so important when we talk about balance.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, one thing I have to encourage some of my clients to do, especially some of those that struggle with their balance, is not to wear socks, not to walk around their house in just socks, because it can be slippery. So on one hand, I'll try to make this brief, but on one hand, if you're in bare feet, it can give your feet a chance to work, and you can sometimes get more feedback from the nerves in your feet, kind of like when you pick something up, you can feel it. So being in bare feet can sometimes give your body more information about where you are. That's why it can be important to get pedicures, right? Get some of those thick calluses off your feet so that you kind of have more feeling in your feet. But on the other hand, sometimes being in bare feet isn't best for people for a variety of reasons. That might increase the amount of pain. You might have flat feet and your foot can't support being barefoot. So having shoes that are grippy enough that you're not slipping, but don't stick to the floor. Has anyone ever had that? Often it's like really rubbery shoes. They kind of catch the too grippy. Yeah. So those also aren't good. You want something that has grip so that you're stable, but also lets your foot just move in your walk.
And Jill, shouldn't we have good arch support too?
Again, that's very individual.
Okay.
Some people, again, so some people really like being barefoot, having minimal arch support because their foot arch is strong enough to support it. And it helps prevent weaken it. But some people, you know, if you've got weaker arches or pain in your foot, things like plantar fasciitis or collapsed arches, those kinds of things, those people really do need good arch support.
That's me.
Yeah. So then, Mary, absolutely, you're someone who needs good arch support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to find something around here.
Oh, whereabouts are you, Mary, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm in the trail area, so I gotta go to Nelson and see what I can find there.
Okay. Yeah, and the best thing to do is once you find a shoe that feels good for you, like do you wear more like workout or running type shoes, Mary?
Well, I wear a shoe. It's a good shoe that I got at a shoe store, but it's still not, the arch support isn't good enough in it. So I gotta go to Nelson and deal with it.
Well, and
I even got orthotics, which didn't even help.
yeah, gotcha. So for
Yeah.
you, someone like you might benefit from either a custom orthotic where it's specific for your foot, or once you find that shoe that feels really good for you, you can often order it online
Yeah.
to come
Yeah,
right to you, as long as it's the exact same type.
yeah.
But for some of you, sometimes a general orthotic, I think there's one, is it Dr. Soul,
Right.
potentially, so some just gel inserts can really help with that
Yeah.
support of your foot.
Yeah, and see, that don't work for me, Jill.
No, and it doesn't work for everybody, Mary, for sure.
yeah.
Especially when you've got more of that complex, severe case that often requires something specific.
Okay, I'm gonna deal with it next week.
When I'm walking
Perfect.
outside, I find a lot of the soft